Welcome back, everybody. Welcome to episode 2 of the Sports Degenerates Show. Little correction after our first episode. I found out that my microphone was not recording properly, so that's why the audio is a little buggy. Nothing too bad. Figured out the problem, so we'll have clear audio for this episode. For this episode, I've got 3 topics for you. So it's the recap of the Daniel Cormier-Stipe Miocic fight, as well as kind of a quick look back on Daniel Cormier's career, where he stands as a legend in the sport and how fans view him. Number 2, be the NBA playoffs now, similar to the NHL playoffs last week. I'm going to look episode series to series, see how it looks, see who I think is going to advance and why, as well as some teams that maybe need to make some changes after if a series goes south for them. And then finally, kind of a new topic that I wasn't ready to talk about, but it's at the forefront of the sports world today, and I really wanted to talk about it, is the Fernando Tatis situation in baseball, and why it's a bigger issue in baseball for celebration and unwritten rules. So, started off, Daniel Cormier, Stipe Miocic headlined UFC 252. To me, it was the perfect end to a trilogy. You had one knock one out in the first fight, the other knocked the other out in the second fight, and then in the third fight, it went to a decision. I think most judges judged it 49-46. I had a 48-47 Miocic, but it was fair. I felt Stipe definitely won. I thought Daniel Cormier won the first and the fifth. I guess the fourth was kind of iffy, but it was fair. Stipe winning makes sense. I thought it was really interesting how Cormier got an early takedown in the first round, but Miocic stood right back up, and Cormier kind of realized that was not going to be his go-to plan. The one interesting thing is Cormier, the overhand right out of the clinch, which is what Daniel Cormier knocked Stipe Miocic out with in the first fight, was there all fight long. Stipe Miocic just did not defend it, which was really interesting because it almost knocked him out in the first round when Miocic kind of had a flash knockdown. Daniel Cormier hit him with a clean overhand right behind the ear, and Miocic's legs completely buckled out and he bounced back up. Stipe was able to kind of take over in the second round when he almost finished Cormier with a hard, I believe it was a right, but it was just a combo. It was a right as he was chasing him down. Stipe, by the time the third fight came around, had figured out that Daniel Cormier, what John Jones figured out a long time ago, tends to just lean. If he stands in front of somebody for too long and his hands don't move, he just kind of starts to fade away because he's cautious of what's coming instead of moving. Cormier survived. I actually didn't think he'd make it out of the third round. He looked in bad shape on that stool in the second round. I mean, his corner man had fingers in his nose applying pressure to get him to wake back up. And to his credit, Cormier did after a minute or so. I will say that in the third round, Miocic's corner did not coach him properly. In the third, Stipe could have hit him at ease. Cormier was slow. He looked unsure of what was coming his way. He really was out of it. And you could see Miocic landing at will, and then all of a sudden would just clinch with him up against the cage. And by about halfway through the third round, Daniel Cormier was back in it. He came to again. He was perfectly okay. I mean, as okay as you can to have a 240-pound man punch you in the head, but he was back. He was coherent. He was moving. He was throwing strikes. Of course, we got to talk about the massive eye poke that Mark Goddard missed, and I'll be the first person to tell you I watch UFC endlessly, and Mark Goddard gets praised for being a good referee only because he's been a referee for a long time. He is an atrocious official that misses calls constantly, but is also way too mouthy with the fighters. Perfect example is Cormier telling him, "He poked me in the eye," to which Mark Goddard responded, "It was a punch, Daniel, now sit down." Now, after the fight, Goddard came out and said, "Oh, it's my fault, but I don't have replays and stuff like that." Well, Mark, then you're contradicting yourself, because you're saying you don't have replays. So you're saying, how can I call what I don't see? Well, then how could you tell Cormier he got punched if you didn't see it? You clearly didn't know what happened there. So what you're saying after the fight, what you're saying during the fight are two completely different things. So you're wrong. And you missed it. And Stipe Miocic was, in Daniel Cormier's words, knuckle deep in his effing eye. because he was. Cormier couldn't see for the last 2 rounds of that fight. That fight changes entirely, although I'm kind of happy that, in a weird way, happy that it wasn't caught, because Cormier couldn't see out of that eye. They would have stopped that fight. Yeah, and it's Vegas. And Vegas never stops a fight, but they would have absolutely stopped that fight. But all in all, Miocic noticed Cormier was coming back in the fourth. Cormier started blinking it out and then realized, you know what, I'm just going to start swinging. And late fourth, early fifth, Cormier was hitting Miocic with these right hands, and you started to see Stipe's legs kind of cross each other. Every time he got hit, he'd stumble a little bit. He'd get knocked off his equilibrium a little bit. And you could see Miocic's corner kind of telling him, dude, clinch it out. You won the fight. Clinch this out. This is his swan song. He's swinging for the fences. This is for you to hold the belt so you can continue to fight. So, really happy. Really happy with the fight. I liked it. I liked that even though it was Cormier's last fight, it would have been cool to see him go out with a win, but at the same time, it would have sent the heavyweight division in disarray. I also like the fact that Cormier was able to walk out of the octagon on his last fight. He wasn't knocked out. He wasn't submitted. He was able to walk out of the octagon, granted not being able to see, but apparently his eye's okay. But he was able to walk out of the octagon under his own power. For Daniel Cormier, I think a guy that doesn't get respected enough, truly. A guy who was the heavyweight Grand Prix champion in Strikeforce, and everybody thinks, well, he was a light heavyweight when he got to the UFC, so people saw him as a light heavyweight. His battles with John Jones, although I don't know if any of them actually count now. I think the first one does, but we figured Jones tested positive if they actually tested him in that fight too. Where people started to hate on Cormier just because he was going against Jones, but then it put Cormier in the public eye to where people started to say, oh, he's a goofy guy, he's a hell of a fighter, but he's a fun-loving guy, he's a great ambassador to the sport, a great father, a great friend, a great teammate, and a great captain over at AKA. Well, you start looking at that and go, oh, so this guy he's really a joy. Then he started to do commentary, and people, again, started to see his personality more, and it helped them out and understood how really a great person Daniel Cormier was on top of a great fighter. Like I said, Strikeforce heavyweight Grand Prix champion, comes to the UFC, becomes a light heavyweight in the UFC because he knew he was going to go straight to the top, but Cain Velasquez is his teammate, and he would not fight Cain Velasquez. So he decided, I'm going to basically kill myself to get down to 205, made weight at 205, beat up that division, got to Jones, couldn't get through Jones, and people kept saying, well, he's a paper light heavyweight champion. Go back and watch his war with Alexander Gustafsson. That fight was incredible. Go back and watch his 2 fights with Rumble Johnson. The one guy that everybody claimed was going to give John Jones his all. He brutalized him. I mean, he wore him down, and within 2 rounds took the title, as well as his fight with Volkan Oezdemir. Really a great light heavyweight champion. Really shocked the world, moving up to heavyweight, although it's his natural weight class. Moved up to heavyweight, knocked out arguably the greatest heavyweight champion of all time, and went on to have an incredible trilogy with him where it's not like, they both got the better of each other in the first 2. And then at the end of it, that's the one of those, the judges may say Stipe won, but if those 2 guys are on the street and that's the fight they just had, both of them are just like, wow, we beat each other up. Like, there's no clear-cut winner. Nobody walked away happy after that. They both got beat up pretty bad. For the heavyweight division, I guess it's kind of clear. It's Stipe Miocic versus Francis Ngannou, which I don't know if anybody knows that fight actually happened before. UFC's done a really WWE type job of nobody remembers that. They went full Jedi mind sweep, Men in Black. Just look at this light, please. Chink. I mean, him and the Derek Lewis fight. You look at Ngannou, he's back to just murking dudes left and right. But look back at it, nobody talks about the Stipe Miocic fight or the Derek Lewis fight where he was afraid to swing, and the Miocic fight where Stipe just wrestled him down and just wore him out. It's just not mentioned. They built his hype train right back up. So that looks like that's going to be the fight to make. It's the second fight. It'll be interesting because I guess the UFC will have to acknowledge that Francis Ngannou has lost a fight before. And that's going to be an interesting fight. It's also going to be interesting to see where Stipe goes after that. Stipe Miocic, firefighter, 37 years old. He's got a kid. I'm sure he's going to gun for another one eventually. 37 years old. He's made his millions. How much more does he got left in the tank? How much more does he want to do? So it is interesting. It's interesting where it left the heavyweight division. Like I said, I am happy in a way to see Stipe win, because if Cormier wins that fight, although he had said he was only interested in fighting for titles, so I wonder if he had won that fight, if he would have retired. But if we go off of what we thought, if he retires after that fight, is it just Stipe versus Francis for the interim belt, or for the new heavyweight belt, the vacated belt, which kind of dampers Stipe, because it's like, yeah, you have the belt, but you literally just fought for the belt and you lost for it. So it's an interesting going forward, but it was a really good fight, and all the best to Daniel Cormier and what he's going to do from here on out. It's not like he's going away. He's on commentator. He's one of the best commentators they have. So, be interesting to see. All right, moving on to topic 2. The NBA playoffs are here. So, the NBA playoffs, they showed up after the NBA did their bubble thing where, quite frankly, I think it kind of failed. There wasn't a whole lot of seeding moving around. They did the whole 9-8 game just to get the Pelicans in, and the Pelicans sucked, so that didn't work. It was too long. By the end of it, you saw teams were just like, nah, we're just not going to play anybody anymore, because what's the point? We already kind of know where we are when it comes to seeding. You were playing teams that, that's the thing. The one thing that really didn't make sense is you had Eastern Conference teams playing Western Conference teams. That was dumb. If you were going to have games for seeding, just have the West play the West and the East play the East. It's just a makeshift schedule. Just make it that way. It has more effect on the seeding. This was a lot of, win and hope another team loses type seeding, and it was really just kind of stupid all around. So, but here we are, the NBA playoffs, with almost nothing changing from when we ended the season to where we are now, except Portland jumped in rather than Memphis. We'll start in the West. The Lakers versus Portland. Damian Lillard's going to drop 50 a game, and they're going to lose in maybe 5. I mean, it's, Damian Lillard's going to do Damian Lillard things where he is just going to, do his damnedest to try to win, but you know what's going to happen. The Lakers are just too good. They're too powerful. They're going to take it. Everybody wants to talk about how, well, the Lakers going forward, they're struggling a little bit. They're not struggling. They're fine, especially against Portland. 4-5 matchup, Houston, Oklahoma City. Russell Westbrook against Oklahoma City. This is an interesting one. It really is. And I'm going to go with Houston, but it is an interesting one because Houston, with that run and gun offense, it's interesting because does it always work? I mean, you watch Houston and sometimes they just go ice cold and they struggle. And this is a team that's, likened to that, what I think of Villanova sometimes when they make the NCAA tournament, is all of a sudden if the threes don't fall, what the hell happens? They have no plan B. It's not like, well, if the threes don't fall, we can rely on our defense. No, you can't. Your defense sucks. So you're kind of screwed. I have Houston just because I think their offense is going to be much better. But it'll be interesting to see now. Russell Westbrook has to come back from injury. Westbrook and Harden played well together during the season, but that offense, just as Mike D'Antoni when he was in Phoenix, drew a blank there, back with the Steve Nash Suns, it didn't always work. So, he'd usually run, and they'd be pretty good. They'd make it out the first round, and then they'd take on a talented team, and see you later. Denver, Utah, I think the Nuggets are going to win. I think that one of the biggest stories going into this bubble, which is crazy because it's like the first big story out of Utah ever, is Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell and how it's like, hey, no, we're going to put it behind us for the betterment of the team. But in reality, they have had their issues before. It's just it's Utah and nobody gave a damn. Now, Rudy Gobert basically gave everybody COVID in the Utah locker room. Well, not everybody. He gave Donovan Mitchell COVID in the Utah locker room and was joking around and, touched everything. There's the video of him after they said he had some type of symptoms. He touched all the microphones in front of him and walked out, and it's like, really, asshole? Really? Okay. So, but I think Denver takes this. I think I think Denver is just, Utah is just not going to get on the same page. I think Denver kind of started the season a little sluggish, but they're back to playing that solid team basketball, and I think Utah is just going to struggle to get on the same page, not just because of the rift in the locker room, but because there's kind of always been that rift in the locker room between Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert. You have your two young stars that just can't seem to get along, and you wonder, because it's the playoffs. Most of these games down to the wire are every possession matters. Well, down to the wire, Donovan Mitchell might just start shooting 45 shots a game. Rudy Gobert is going to be posting up, begging for the ball. I think it's just going to be a mess. I think Denver beats Utah. Probably in 5, maybe 6. And I wonder what happens with Utah moving forward. If in this offseason, after they tried to put on the facade, like, no, Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert are friends, do they move one of them, which would be Rudy Gobert? Do they move Rudy Gobert? Maybe. I'm not sure, but maybe. And finally, it'll be the Clippers versus the Mavericks. Oh, Dallas. Everybody's sweetheart this year. Luka and Porzingis, and you'd watch them on TV and think they were killing it, and then you find out they're the 7th seed. I think Dallas is a poor man's Houston, to be quite honest with you. Luka Doncic is amazing, but they're a poor man's Houston. They score a lot of points, but defense be damned. That's not happening. And if you shut Luka down, they have some supporting cast, but Porzingis is certainly not the superstar that everybody, trumped him up to be back in New York, and it was partially because he just played for New York, and New York sucked at the time. So, hey, yeah, great. He's super awesome. But I think the Clippers, it's another one. I could see this one as a sweep. Maybe 5, just because Luka goes off for one game and gets them one win. But I think Dallas is a team building still for the future. Keep building around Luka, but I think the Clippers are just, they're set out there to win a title this year. Bounce over to the Eastern Conference. Now I'm cheating a little bit because this game just ended. The Orlando Magic took the Milwaukee Bucks in Game 1, 122-110. I still absolutely think Milwaukee's going to win the series, but 5-6 games, not bad for Orlando. It's kind of just basic guys. They're missing one of their young superstars in Jonathan Isaac. Superstar's a lean word, but from Orlando, he's a superstar. Milwaukee's going to take this in 5, maybe 6, but Orlando with a 1 win today. I think the win over Orlando shows what you're going to see a lot of these series, maybe in Game 1 or 2, is Milwaukee was very lazy with their players by the end. They weren't playing them fully. Giannis got suspended, but they, even in certain games, they weren't playing guys full games, even though it was close because they had all but locked up the 1 seed. So why wouldn't they? Second would be Indiana and Miami. Excuse me. This one's tough. This one is 2 teams that play exactly the same way. I'm going to go with Indiana. I think Indiana made a push since getting in the bubble to get not only up to the 4, but people don't realize the Sixers were hot on their tail for 4, 5, 6 were all right there. And Orlando jumped Miami and Miami was hot at the beginning of the season and they cooled off and they kind of floated average down the rest of the season. And I think Indiana is going to come out and I think they're going to play really well, really solid basketball. I think this could be a series that goes to 7, but I think Indiana is going to come out on top just as a team as well that's been together longer. That's a core that's been around. Whereas you have Jimmy Butler fresh in Miami, Tyler Hero, stuff like that. And it'll be also interesting to see if they lose in the first round. Does Jimmy Butler chastise the locker room because ain't nobody else coming in here at 2 in the morning? No, Jimmy. Nobody has to come in there at 2 in the morning to score 21 points a game. So, the Boston Celtics versus my hometown Philadelphia 76ers. Please, Boston, sweep them. Please sweep them. I got them Boston winning in 5 because Embiid will win one game, but for Philadelphia, please sweep the Sixers so Brett Brown gets fired. Brett Brown should have been fired 2 years ago. Please sweep them so Brett Brown's pick and roll offense and drop back defense is no more, and a super talented team can finally win basketball games. I think it's kind of funny that Boston might do something that is going to do something that helps the Sixers for years, and it's ironic because it's going to hurt Boston. So thanks for that, Boston. Boston's just going to dominate. Every one of these games is going to be close till the end, and then just as happened last night, the game's close to the end, they're going back and forth, and then the Sixers just fumble it. They just bungle it away, and it's like, if you watch game 1, Embiid and man possessed down there because Tyson Cantor can't stop them. Boston's even going small late in game, and as Boston's making a run, you have Alec Burks, trying to play hero ball, Tobias Harris trying to play hero ball. It was a 4-point game with 2 minutes left. They had a possession that took 20 seconds, and Embiid never even got the ball. Really? That's your offense? He's your best player. Come on. So, Boston in 5. Just take out the Sixers. Send Brett Brown back to Australia or Maine or the Israeli League, because I don't think he should be coaching the NBA. Toronto and Brooklyn. Toronto. Credit to Brooklyn. Granted, the Eastern Conference wasn't like the West. The Eastern Conference, not a whole lot of teams were really running to make the playoffs. But credit to Brooklyn because they lost everybody. They had already lost. People tend to forget. Technically, Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant are players for the Brooklyn Nets. But they're not. And they missed more players had left. So they're not playing. But Brooklyn just kept plugging along. Got the 7 seed. Didn't let Magic catch them. They got smoked by Toronto last night. But, hey. Great job. Going to the second round of the Western Conference. You have the Lakers. You have Houston. It's going to be the Lakers. But a weird part of me wants to pick Houston. And that, as crazy as that sounds, as insane as it is, and I am going to pick the Lakers because I'm not that bold. A weird part of me wants to pick Houston. There's just something about the Lakers right now that they don't seem to have it all together. And I don't know if with Anthony Davis, LeBron is going to play hero ball or could play hero ball. Maybe Anthony Davis tries to play hero ball. I don't know, but it's going to be interesting. It's going to be an interesting matchup. These two teams played each other in the bubble already. Houston won without Russell Westbrook as well. So we'll see. But I would go with the Lakers, but I would say probably about 6 games. I think Houston's going to give them a run. I think there's going to be a time in the series, if Houston does win, there's going to be a time in the series where people are looking at Houston and going, are they going to win? Are the Houston Rockets really going to beat the Lakers? Which, by the way, I would love, because there's nothing better than watching ESPN panic because the Lakers didn't make it. You got Denver. You got the Clippers. It's the Clippers. Denver's a good team. Denver's one of those teams they're consistently really good in the Western Conference. But in the NBA especially, you need those superstars. Denver's that team that in any other league, in baseball, in football, in hockey, when they get to the playoffs, you don't know, because they can always win a game. Nobody's just going to outright trounce them every game. But every team's got superstars that they don't have, and they're going to win by 6. You know what I mean? Jokic, Jamal Murray, they're all really good players, but they're not superstars. That's just the reality of it. So, I think the Clippers take that probably in 5, actually. I don't think it's going to be a long series, but I think each game is going to be competitive. So, I think the Clippers would take them out pretty easily, barring any injuries. The Clippers would take them out pretty easily, but if you look at each game, it'll be like a 4-point game or a 6-point game. They'll always be in each game, just not enough to put them over. Milwaukee, Indiana. Milwaukee rules the Eastern Conference Central with an iron fist, and they're going to do it again. It's just one of those things. Indiana matches up poorly with Milwaukee, And that's just the reality. You need somebody that can shut down Giannis, and then you win against Milwaukee. That's kind of the obvious one is you shut down Giannis, you win the series. Congrats. Indiana doesn't have anybody that can do that. We saw that all throughout the year. Milwaukee's going to steamroll them. That's a 5-game series at best. It's just, Indiana, that pace of, kind of like a methodical pace of offense and efficient offense, but it's not going to be enough to take out Milwaukee. Then you have Boston and Toronto, and I think it's another one that's just, the Eastern Conference is not going to be close because I think Toronto is going to crush them. I think Toronto has just been really good this entire break. They lose Kawhi, and you look at them and you're thinking, well, they're easily going to fall to the 5 or the 6 seed. But no, they lost Kawhi and just continued to play the same type of basketball they have. So, okay. I mean, Pascal Siakam's been struggling to find his groove a little bit in the bubble, but I think they take out Boston. I think it will be interesting to see a Kemba Walker in his first competitive playoff series. The ones, I think he might have went like one time with Charlotte, but the first round series against the Sixers isn't competitive. So Brett Brown sucks as a coach. It'll be interesting to see him in his first playoff series, but I think this just comes down to all-around team basketball, as well as the way Toronto plays Boston, I think just works out perfectly for Toronto. So then we have the 2 LA teams go at it in the Western Conference. I got the Clippers. I got the Clippers in 6. I just think there's something about Kawhi being Kawhi. I think he's going to help, but I think Paul George this year really has been so close so many times. I think now you're going to see him finally just go, no, I'm going to go to the finals now. I want to get there. So I'd like to see that. I'd like to see the Clippers win. I also think Doc Rivers is a better coach than Frank Vogel. And I don't think Frank Vogel's a bad coach, but I just think Doc Rivers is absolutely a better coach than Frank Vogel. LeBron is going to try to LeBron it. He's gonna try to play his all, but the issue LeBron's gonna have is the Clippers have 2 power forwards that can defend them. And you look at the Clippers bench, while they're not great, the Lakers' backup center is Dwight Howard. Dwight Howard blows. He's horrible. You want to talk about zero chemistry with anybody. You watch the Lakers when Dwight Howard's on the court. It's a mess. He can't make a bucket. He stands like 8 feet away from the foul line when he gets fouled, so he's automatically missing them. He really doesn't even rebound that well anymore. He just looks lazy, kind of still wants to be that superstar he was in Orlando, but isn't. So he tries, but it just for the detriment of the team. And I think that's going to be the difference. I think the starters are going to keep themselves close, but the bench is going to come in and the Clippers are going to take out the Lakers just based on bench. The Clippers early in the season were struggling a little bit, but since the second half of the season, they really kicked it on and started doing well. A lot of people thought that the Clippers and the Sixers would do that, but nope, the Clippers have a good coach. And then lastly, it's Toronto, it's Milwaukee, it's a repeat of the conference finals of last year. Sorry, my air conditioner turned on. It's a repeat of the conference finals from last year. The same thing happens. Toronto walks right through them. For multiple reasons. One of which is this. Giannis is tired. He'll never win in Milwaukee, and the main reason why is because, especially in the playoffs, you really figure out that, they need him. He's playing a brutal game every game, even against the Magic. In reality, this win by the Magic today has helped every team along the way that has to face them because it's almost like a pitch count in baseball. This guy's only got so many games he can play until it just starts wearing down, and you see it every time. You saw it in the Boston series 2 years ago. You saw it in the Toronto series last year. By the time they finally get to the end of the playoffs, he's beat. He's had it. He's exhausted. And it's not that Milwaukee has a bad supporting cast. The problem is they're a supporting cast that when the lead actor's gone, they're not good. Chris Middleton making $120 million. I don't care. He's not that good. So I don't want to hear that. So I definitely see Toronto just dominating again. They play that smart team basketball. Giannis is just beat from carrying the Bucks all the way up into the finals, the conference finals. And I think Toronto takes them in probably about 6 games, maybe 5. I mean, they just, even without Kawhi, I don't think the Bucks have enough to carry themselves through the playoffs in so many games in such a short period of time. I just don't think they have it. And then you have the rematch, the guy who left the team that he just won a title with against that team. You'd have the battle of the 2 seeds, the Clippers and the Raptors. And I think the Clippers are going to take the series. I think it's going to be a good series. I think that would be a series that goes 7. There's some about the Raptors that in games that they lose, you think the series is over. You go back to last year, the Sixers-Raptors series that was, way more competitive that everybody tends to think was the Eastern Conference Finals because everybody forgets the Bucks just got steamrolled by them. But that 7-game series, the Raptors would kind of just fade in and out. They would play like world beaters, then they'd be terrible, then they'd play like world beaters, and they'd be terrible. It was crazy. Well, I think that's the same thing that's going to happen in this series. I think the Clippers will be able to impose their will in some games and not in others, if that makes sense. The Clippers can well outscore the Raptors. I mean, there's no doubt in anybody's mind that the Clippers are just going to outscore the Raptors if it just came down to a scoring battle. The Raptors, however, are a defensively sound team that's going to try to slow the pace down and keep it to where they want it to be. In some games, that'll work. In some games, it won't. And I think it's going to work more for the Clippers than the Raptors when all is said and done. I think the Clippers would end up taking it probably in 6 or 7. And I think one of the biggest issues is I think Kawhi's going to play well, but I think once you get to the NBA Finals, Paul George is going to win Finals MVP because I think he's had enough of being the today's Tracy McGrady or today's Allen Iverson, where he's a superstar that just isn't winning titles. Well, now it's time to win a title. He got traded to the Clippers. He asked to be traded to the Clippers. He's going to go to the Clippers. I think they're going to win. They're going to win the title. Doc Rivers gets a second title. Good for him. I always like Doc Rivers as a coach. And maybe their assistant coach Sam Cassell wants to come over to Philadelphia. Be a good coach. That's just a thought. But that's how I see it. I got the Clippers taking the was it the Larry O'Brien Trophy? Yeah, Larry O'Brien Trophy. Then finally the last one, which is a new one. This happened last night, and it's taken over sports. Fernando Tatis, for those that don't know, is a young, super exciting, budding superstar for the San Diego Padres. Most won't know because, 1, baseball's terrible at promoting themselves. And 2, it's San Diego, so nobody cares. But Fernando Tatis really lighting the world on fire so far. In a game last night against the Texas Rangers, the Padres were blowing the doors off them at this point. I think they were up by like 6 or 7 runs. And what ended up happening was there was a 3-0 count with the bases loaded. And the Padres manager, Padres manager Joyce Tingler said, "Don't swing." They gave him the red light. He didn't see it, and he swung through it. Well, how do you say his name? Ian Gabot, the pitcher for the Rangers, threw a 3-0 cookie over the plate, and Tatis murdered it. It was a no-doubter off the bat. See you later, grand slam. The issue is Chris Woodward, who's the manager for the Rangers, was visibly upset almost immediately that a guy just hit a grand slam off of him. The thing is, if you told me Chris Woodward was upset, I'd go, yeah, he's upset with his pitcher who just loaded the damn bases and then let up a grand slam. You know what I mean? What do you want? What actually happened was something much different. He was mad at Joyce Tingler, who has a connection to the Rangers organization, and went really like scorched earth on him because his young star just hit a grand slam on him in a competitive Major League Baseball game. Okay? What? Why? You know, and there's a video where you can see Joyce Tingler yelling over to the Rangers dugout, which you're hoping Tingler with a young core, young team, and a young star would just completely go to bat for him. The benches would clear, all that, happy horse shit that happens in actual rivalry games. It didn't. Tingler looked across to Woodward and said, "I'll talk to him," which is pathetic. You're letting another coach who you're whooping his ass tell you how to run your baseball team. So what ends up happening is it becomes a big controversy on the field. Well, then Cabot then throws behind Manny Machado, who's hitting next, and immediately gets tossed. Here's the problem. One, I never understood in baseball why the guy who does what you don't like never gets hit. It's the next guy up, which it kind of leads to policing inside the teams, but still. So Manny Machado gets thrown at. I think they missed, which is hilarious because everybody made fun of him because they're like, well, there you go. That's your reasoning. But this is proven to be a bigger problem in baseball than just this incident because Tingler came out afterwards and basically said that he wants Tatis to have fun. He only reason he wanted to talk to him was he swung through a 3-0 red light, which is fine. He's like, we give guys the green light all the time. We gave him the red light because we were just crushing them at this point. We had the bases loaded. We gave him the red light. Okay, fine. That was what he said was his only issue. But again, that camera caught him saying, Chris Woodward, I'll talk to him. Like, oh, I'm sorry. There's that camaraderie. And that camaraderie is MLB and their stupid ass unwritten rules. The MLB rule book is this fat. And guess what? The unwritten rule book is this fat. There's so many rules that just make no sense. That is the worst. And this is one that I didn't even know was a thing, to be quite honest. Like, I understand there's certain ones, you don't steal bases and stuff like that when you're crushing a team, which I still don't agree with because you're a major league team. If you don't want a team to run the score up on you, do better. In reality, all these guys, their stats are what get them paid. Why would you tell them to stop? Their stats are what get them paid. Fernando Tatis just added a grand slam, a home run, and 4 RBIs to his name as a young player in a 60-game season. You're damn right he's going to hit a home run. You're damn right he should hit the grand slam. That's to get paid. Think about it. If he gets that opportunity 4 times in a year, right? First off, you don't get the bases loaded all the time. But imagine that, 4 times in a year. And say by some magical occurrence you hit 4 grand slams in a year. You're going full, Albert Pujols, Ryan Howard back in the late 2000s. Or 2010s. You're just crushing grand slams. That's 4 home runs and 16 RBIs. That's the difference of 40 home runs and 36 home runs. That's the difference of 100 RBIs and 84 RBIs. That's a lot of RBIs. That's a lot of home runs. That's a lot of money. Do your thing and hit the ball. The other issue I have is, and again, why it's a bigger issue with baseball, a sport that is horrible at promoting itself, horrible at really governing itself, is now basically these unwritten rules are telling young kids don't have fun. Grand slams are fun. Home runs are fun. That's how you get people to watch. You know what's not fun? Watching a guy walk in a dude with the bases loaded. Or a guy sack fly one to the left. That sucks. Let the young dude who's having fun out there hit a grand slam. It's awesome. Let him do that. Why would you stop him? So it came out afterwards too, which I did like, is both Reggie Jackson and Trevor Bauer came out in support of Fernando Tatis. Basically telling him, like, listen, dude, swing. A lot of people, there's a changing of the guard of the younger generation is looking at a lot of baseball's unwritten rules and saying, those rules are stupid, and that's stupid. And the backlash that happened last night was simple. You're a professional. You don't want somebody to do something, don't let them. Pitch better. You get the bases loaded and you're already getting blown out. Normally what you would tell a pitcher when you're getting blown out is throw strikes. Who cares? You lost. But no, he couldn't find the damn strike zone, and then the one that he threw went right down Main Street. Well, guess what? Why did you expect him not to swing? Shit, I'm swinging every time. I'm going to miss, but I'm swinging every time. Fernando Tatis did not miss. So, it's just one of those things between Tingler and Woodward as well. Woodward yelling over at Tingler and Tingler saying, I'll talk to him. Are you going to talk to Woodward if, say you let that inning go by and don't score any more runs? Say the Rangers just got hot that inning and just started beating up on your bullpen. Are you just going to tell them to stop scoring? Like, hey, we didn't score on you, so you can't score on us and win the game. No, you beat them into the ground and then beat them down further so you win. That's the point of sports. Hell, the Atlanta Falcons would like to have a word with you when they say, don't, keep your foot on the gas. 28-3 ring a bell? Sports is littered by these massive comebacks of teams. Baseball is the only one where they tell you, just, take your foot off the gas. Screw that, dude. Bury him. Football, they run the ball, okay, but it runs the clock out. Baseball, there's no clock. What are you going to do? Bunt 3 times, get easy outs, and then just hope your pitchers hold up? Screw that. Run the score up. Have fun. Fernando Tatis, keep hitting home runs. Every young baseball player out there, bring the sport back. Nobody wants to watch baseball anymore anyway. I do, but baseball's a dying sport, and it's sad. And you know what would help it? A shit ton of home runs and a lot of young guys having fun that you can promote on your billboards. You know what you can promote on commercials? Fernando Tatis sending a ball 400 feet that way. That's cool. That's fun. So, you can't promote? Unwritten rules. Oh, this is baseball's unwritten rule. Yeah, it don't sell beer. But you know what does? Home runs. So, Fernando Tatis, you keep doing what you're doing. Lastly, real quick, my bets last week did not do well. For more bets, by the way, my Instagram is down in the description below. Sports Degenerates Podcast, or Sports Degenerates Show on Instagram. It'll be linked in the description below. I tend to post bets and lines that I like fairly frequently, especially when football season comes around. Bet it fairly frequently. These will all be for Wednesday, August 19th. It'll be easy. Celtics -4.5 over the Sixers. Lock of the century. The game will never end at 2 points. The Sixers will blow it, and then they'll really blow it. And then the Raptors Nets over 225.5. It's Raptors. The Nets don't have the offense that forces the Raptors to slow their game down and not score. That's why you saw them blow the over out of the water in the first game. It's just going to be an absolute bloodbath. So those are my two. Celtics -4.5. Raptors Nets 225.5. Follow Sports Degenerates Show on Instagram for more bets and my stories. And then lastly, next show will be Friday. Right now we have 2 topics for Friday. One will be the NHL playoffs. It'll be in the second round, hopefully. I think most will be. If not, it'll be in a Game 7. So if it's a Game 7 scenario, I might pass it. I might not. But right now, tentatively, the NHL playoffs will be in the show next week. And then we'll be looking forward to the NFL season. Before the season actually begins, I want to have a show where I just break down everything. Divisions, who I believe is going to win, what the storylines will be for the season. I started my show a little bit later than I wanted to this summer, so I wasn't able to kind of jump out there. But at least now I won't have like who's the number one safety list. That's not what I'll have, but I'll have, good content for the NFL up until the season starts in like 3 weeks to a month. And God, I can't wait for that. But that's my show. I'm your host, Frank Weibel. Please like, comment, subscribe. Follow Sports Degenerate Show on Instagram. And as always, see you in the next episode.